Hey guys, Jesse here. And today I thought I'd try something a little bit different with this video. It is going to be a review, but I thought I'd set myself apart, not only from myself, but from other Gundam YouTubers, and try to make this a review that's more than just the kit rotating on a base and talking about it. So, for this video, we're going to actually see the whole process of building the Gundam and painting it and everything that I go through to get the results I get. And hopefully that will make it far more interesting. So I'm going to be putting a lot more effort, admittedly, into this video. So if you enjoy this, please let me know. And I will more than likely try to do this for future builds. But yeah, the Zaku is actually my favorite mobile suit, and the one from the show looked amazing. So without further ado, this is the HG Zaku 2 F-Type Solari RFV. Let's get into it. So first things first, this kit strangely comes with pre-weathered markings, which is very odd. Now, if you guys know me, I like to weather my own kits. I don't need Bandai to do it for me, and I certainly don't need them to do it in sticker form. So we'll be applying those insignias a different way. So like any good HG, we're going to start with the assembly of the torso. This kit comes with 7 runners, 2 of which are pretty small and one of which only has 3 pieces on it, so it's a pretty quick build. This entire torso took me about 30 minutes, but as I was building, I just noticed how incredibly detailed this kit was, and far more detailed than any Zaku I've ever built. Now, this is a part where I noticed a bit of a discrepancy in the manual. The piece that holds the shoulder parts doesn't match what's in the manual, and I had to pull out this little slip that comes with the kit. As you can see, the part on the left is what's in the manual, but the part on the right is what you actually get. So I'm not exactly sure what this was all about. I don't know if it was a typo or what, but it didn't affect the stability of the kit or the assembly, so not a big deal. Now, again, this kit, the details off the roof, you'll see at the end with the completed torso, but as you can see, the seam lines are almost completely hidden by overlapping parts. There's no seam lines on this at all. Now, again, am I suggesting that some Netflix money had some influence on how good this kit was? No. But whatever the case is, I'm not going to complain too much. It resulted in an incredible kit so far with just tons of detail. As you can see, the shoulder parts there, giving some much needed mobility to the bulky Zaku. Next up was the head, which was very finely detailed as well. Now, as you can tell here, I spent a lot of time sanding the tubes just because they had pretty bad mold lines. You could use your X-Acto knife to get rid of those, which is what I typically do, but I'll just sand them if they're across a large area. Now, this kit has some tiny, tiny pieces. I mean, pieces that would rival an RG. This is only on the head so far, but as you can tell, I mean, tiny. I definitely didn't drop these a whole bunch of times trying to put this head together. Now, the mono eye is very unique on this kit. It's more like a tri-eye thing, similar to the Gundam, and they give you stickers for it, but of course, we're going to paint it here in a moment. But it also has that gimmick of being able to rotate via that little switch like all Zaku HGs can do. Now, this kit has a couple of like antennas on the left and right that kind of look like bunny ears. I decided to just glue those in because they didn't really snap in any way. They just sort of slotted in. Now it's time to paint the mono eye. Now I'm going to use something that I said I don't like using, so you keep this between you and me. What I did here only stays within the context of this video. Capiche? That's right, it's a Gundam marker. I'm using metallic red from the metallic marker set. I really don't think the metallic marker set is that bad. I think this is like the one viable set of Gundam markers to me. I think the color is really good. It's just all the problems that I've talked about before with Gundam markers still apply. So I do, of course, pour it out into the bottom of the box here to use as sort of a palette. Do not put Gundam marker directly onto your kit, you will have a bad time. Use a brush just like this. So here we are, just getting some of the excess off my brush. Now this is a very small brush with a very fine tip at the end, because we're just going to try to paint on the parts that need to be red and try to avoid the raised areas. Now we are going to clean up the raised areas. You're not going to completely be able to avoid that. As you can see, I've already got some paint on there. I'm sorry if this camera angle is kind of bad. Working around the camera can always be fun, but we paint in the eyes. Now here's the final product, and I kind of forgot to film this part of me sanding away the excess Gundam marker with a fine sandy stick there. But as you can see, when you sand off just the top part where the Gundam marker is left, it looks really clean. Now I decided to panel line the track here of the mono eye, just because the top part of the head actually secures on very tightly, and I actually had a lot of trouble getting it apart just to do this painting. So I didn't want to risk breaking it again, so I decided to just do this now while we were here. That's Tamiya panel line accent color. I've used that for years, and as you can tell, that's a very old bottle. So one bottle will last you quite a long time if you're economic with it and just use it properly. I think I've only ever bought 2 bottles in my entire life so far. And here's the head and torso put together. Looks excellent. I'm not sure how I feel about those bunny ear antennas. I don't even remember them in the show, but maybe they'll grow on me. As you can see, the head articulation is okay. It's pretty limited by the design of the Zaku head, but that's pretty typical for HG Zakus. Next come the arms, and surprisingly, this kit kind of has a bit of an inner frame, as you can see there. The entire arm there has a gray inner frame that you construct before you put on the armor. And we have our first seam line, which is just the front of the forearm, pretty typical for Zaku's, and on a nice kind of flat, undetailed part, so shouldn't be too bad. Just using some thin cement there to cover up the seam, and we'll sand that off. I really like this detail on the back of the arm. I think that spider kind of mechanical detail is super cool. I might as well show you the hand options at this point. So we have a couple of holding hands. Really wish we got some closed fists, but those are just fine. We've got a trigger finger only for the right hand, unfortunately. Really wish we got a left hand with that one. And finally, we've got an open left hand that's sort of like supporting. It's not really splayed out, it's more for supporting just the Zaku machine gun. Now, unfortunately, these hands are not color accurate. You're gonna have to paint some of that gray in there, and we will do that. Fortunately, it's a very neutral gray, so it should be easy to match. For articulation, you got a ball joint on the hand, a bicep swivel on the arm there, and a full 180 on the elbow, which is just excellent. For the Zaku shoulder here, that middle spike technically should be black with a yellow pinstripe. They give you a sticker for it, but I'm just going to paint it. Should be pretty easy since it's a molded detail. And here he is with his arms on his torso. I didn't show the building of the shield there, but as you can see, it's highly detailed. It's super articulated. Everything on this guy is super articulated. The arms go up really high for a Zaku, which is nice. And the 180 bend in the elbow there is really going to help with articulation when we go to pose this guy. Next up are the legs and the waist unit, and I tend to build the waist unit first before the legs just because I like constructing the mobile suit as I go. But in any case, the legs, of course, have incredible detail. There's the pseudo inner frame that's in there. But at this point, I'm starting to notice that this kit might have too much detail. I like panel lines as much as the next guy, but this kit kind of goes a little over the top, especially in the legs. You gotta appreciate this mobile suit's kicks, though. This Zaku has some really nice shoes. Unfortunately, there's some hollow space under there, which is a little odd considering the Gundam feet were fully detailed, so not sure what happened there. And here's a closer look at one of the legs. As you can see, tons of detail, tons of panel line. I really like how they handled the tubing on this Zaku. It's nice that it's part of that hinge mechanism so it doesn't impede any movement. As you can see, the feet have some incredible range of movement. being able to come flat and then do a nice bend there with nice detail poking through the knee. And that top armor part of the foot doesn't get in the way at all. And here's a look at the lower unit all put together. The front skirt is very odd in its articulation. You have to move this hinge forward so that you can move the side skirts, or else they'll just bump into each other. And then you can move the front skirt forward. Now, I'm sure you could split that front skirt, but it would require some modding of the armor, which I didn't really feel like doing. But as you can see, I've never seen a Zaku be able to put its leg in that position before, so the articulation on the lower half is great. And as you can see, you have variable hips, allowing it to do a crouching or kneeling pose a lot easier. So definitely one of the most well-designed HG articulated lower halves that I've ever seen, at least. And here he is, all put together, and he's looking a little plain Jane, but after some panel lining and some paint, he really comes alive. And I think you would do this kit a disservice if you didn't at least panel line it. I really love the proportions of this kit. I think it looks awesome. The only complaint I have is maybe the gap between the torso and the arms. They're a little wide, but honestly, it's not a big deal whatsoever. And as for the paint, this shoulder should technically be gray, along with that gray kind of lining on the shoulder pad there, and I just did that with some Vallejo gray violet. The hands as well needed some gray on the inside, and I just used the same color there as well. The shoulder spike there needed some black with some yellow. As you can see, I used Citadel Abaddon black and Vallejo golden yellow. And the little bear claw things on the feet, I just used some saddle brown. Now next up came the decals. Now I used most of these little warning stickers, but of course I didn't use any of the pre-weathered stickers that were provided. I was a big fan of this red wolf sticker, so I went ahead and used it. And as you can see, the warning symbols don't look too bad on the black plastic, but the weathering will help cover that up. Now one I needed was this little Xeon symbol, and of course I wasn't going to use that sticker, so thankfully I had an old dry transfer from my first kit I ever built, actually, which was Johnny Ridden's Master Grade Zaku. It's a little bigger, but I think it'll work. So I grabbed some tape, line it up, and get to work. Now, I don't hate dry transfers as much as everyone else. I actually quite like them. I wish we still got them, but I can understand why people don't like them. The trick really is to get some tape and make sure to line it up before you start rubbing away. But as long as you spend some quality time making sure the entire decal gets transferred from the dry transfer, you can tell because it kind of slightly changes color. You're not going to have any issues. You can even lift up the tape a little bit to see if you've left any decal behind, then put it back down and then rub the rest of it on there. So I don't know. I like it. It worked out well for me. As you can see, I used a variety of things to rub on that decal, the back of a brush, my tweezers, even my fingernail to get the really sharp details. But to me, dry transfers are always just the best and easiest thing to put on. And you don't have to worry about any borders from a sticker or even water slides. So even though I don't straight build kits, I always found that dry transfers look the best for people who do straight build or even just panel line and top coat. But anyways, that's me just rambling. But as you can see, came out perfectly fine. A little big, but I can live with it. And finally, we gotta tackle that shoulder insignia. So let's grab a brush and get to it. Now, the closest match I could find for the color was Vallejo's Cardinal Purple. It's not a perfect match, but it's pretty damn close. So I decided to go with that. I get my brush wet and I go to work. Now, it's not perfect. As you can see, it's a little squashed and fat, but after cleaning it up a little bit and sharpening up with my X-Acto knife, it's looking a lot better. And then after adding the white borders to it, again, it's not perfect, but I'm not going for perfect, and I'm happy with it. Next, we do the weathering, and yes, that is a bottle of Folk Art Black from Walmart. I find that most blacks are perfectly fine. You don't need the fanciest black out there. Just the important part of this is it needs to be an acrylic black for a step we're going to see here in a moment. But I take a small brush, a flat brush, making sure the brush is actually flat, covered it in paint, and then just barely touched the side of my brush to the edges to create paint chipping. And I focused mainly on the corners and really sharp edges and the inner corners of a lot of the shapes on the mobile suit. I also use the very tip of my brush, the sort of flat, long part, to create scratches as I move towards the inside of larger panels. However, I try not to go too crazy because after this, I'm going to do some sponging to create more scattered chips. And I also bring some chips more inward and black it out some more to make it look like a large paint chip that I will end up using some silver on to make it look like bare metal, like as if it got damaged all the way past the primer, which you'll see later. So here I grab a sponge. Some people like to put a sponge or hold a sponge with a pair of tweezers. I find like I have no control if I do that, so I just have it on my hand here. It does get my fingers pretty dirty though, because the sponge will soak through and end up on my fingers, so I try my best not to touch the model as much as possible or handle it very gingerly. But here I'm just sponging on larger, flatter areas, trying not to go overboard. It's very easy to go overboard with sponging. Trust me, I did a tutorial on it a long time ago and I went way too overboard on it, but it was mainly for demonstration purposes. But again, focusing on the corners, just trying to scatter it as much as possible, not trying to focus too much on one area. Next, I wanted to use some streaking grime here. This is an enamel paint, and that's why the first layer had to be acrylic, because we're going to remove this paint with some mineral spirits, and acrylic won't wipe away with mineral spirits, but enamel will. This stuff, warning by the way, stinks to high heaven. Scientists are still trying to figure out whether or not this stinks more or a pile of dog shit, and the results are still inconclusive. But in any case, if you're going to use this stuff, just do it in a well-ventilated area, unlike me. So anyways, as you can see, I cover the model completely with this, making sure to always stroke down with a fan brush and never to stroke up or to do like swirls, and making sure not to let it pull too heavily in corners and areas. Now, as you can see, it's completely dirty. I waited about 15 minutes for it to dry. I then load my brush up with some mineral spirits and I remove most of it, always stroking down to try to create the effect of streaks. Now, this stuff will build up in the crevices and other recessed areas and make it look real grimy. And then removing it from the large surfaces here will create those streaks and just overall make it look like a machine. Now, a lot of people claim online, or I guess it's known, that mineral spirits can weaken bandized plastics specifically because they're kind of soft. But that's only if you leave it sitting on there. Mineral spirits will start to eat away at it. I think it'll do that to anything you let it sit on. So as you can see, after I kind of get the result I want, I make sure to dab it a bit with a paper towel to get most of the mineral spirits and thinner off of there. So in my experience, I've never had an issue. Next, I move on to using Testor's flat aluminum, the only Testor's paint I like. It's the best silver I've ever found, in my opinion. I grab a dry brush and a very, very tiny brush for some precision stippling, and I go ahead and dry brush the gray parts. Now, as you can see, I'm still barely touching the model. My dry brushing isn't as violent, maybe, as some people's are. But yeah, I just touch the corners, do just a little bit of strokes there. Same thing with the gray parts on the corner here. And then here I do a little more heavier dry brushing because it's kind of an inner frame part where there's going to be a lot of use. So it won't be peeking out as much, but it'll make more sense for that part to be more scratched up. Then I take that really precise brush in this terrible camera angle. I'm really sorry about that. And I basically add a little bit of silver to the larger splotches of black from my earlier paint chipping. giving the sort of illusion that some scratches have gone through the primer and onto the bare metal. This is kind of the quote-unquote secret technique, the next level technique that can make your chipping really look more realistic. And here's the final result so far. We've got one more thing to do, but as you can see, some of that silver is just on the edges, just on the corners where I feel like there would be the most wear. And then finally, we're going to use some Tamiya Weathering Masters. This is some of my favorite stuff. Not using that applicator though, because it's worn out. We're going to use my new makeup applicator. You can get like 300 of these, by the way, for like $5 on Amazon. So, and they're perfect for this stuff. This is basically just weathering powders. You don't have to use Tamiya's Weathering Masters, but I just find it to be more convenient, and they give you 3 different powders. In any case, I take the soot specifically. As you can see, I use it a lot. And I just go from the topmost parts of the model and I just pull straight down, creating some more streaks, just more depth and variation to the streaks. I try to get on some larger panels, maybe where there's more oil or leakage or stuff like that. And yeah, just basically go around some of the edges, just giving it a little more variation in color and tone. And this is pretty much the final result. We only have a top coat to apply, but that's my weathering process for the most part. Sometimes I'll do heavy rust on things, but I didn't feel the need to do it here. And like I said, we're going to finish off with the best top coat ever, TS80 by Tamiya. And here's how he's looking after a top coat of TS80. I'm pretty pleased with this weathering job so far. I think I struck a really good balance this time around, so I'm actually quite proud of this Zaku. But what's a Zaku without his weapons? So we've got to take care of those. And first things first is we're going to paint this Heat Hawk to look all awesome and hot. So I first prime it in white. And my plan here was to completely cover this in yellow and do a gradient. So I start with medium yellow from Vallejo and completely coat the edge here in yellow. I want a nice bright base coat of yellow. Then I move on to a sort of orange. It's light red by Vallejo, and I just try to get the edge there. Now, I left this part in just to show that, yes, you can make mistakes while painting stuff. It's not the end of the world. My paint was splattering like crazy. I don't think I had the pressure high enough, but after fixing that, I came back in here and got the result I wanted. And as you can see, it was all yellow again because I wiped off all that paint and basically started over. So yeah, I mean, if you run into issues, it's okay to start over. It's not the end of the world. We do things to fix it, etc. So yeah, I thinned my paint here a little bit, upped the pressure, and got what I wanted. As you can see, I was spraying against my backdrop there, my filter. Don't do that. Don't do that. That's me being bad, as you can see. Then I move on to a darker red and just hit the very edge of the heat axe. I believe, I didn't show it, but I believe the color here is Bloody Red by Vallejo. And after all that, this is what I got. I'm really pleased with it. And I went ahead and went in with some white and some touch-up painting by hand with a brush to sort of make that gradient a little stronger, to make the heat a little more prevalent. I also matte coated this and then went over the blade itself with a gloss varnish to make it really shiny. I also painted the leg missile things. I'm not sure what color they're supposed to be, but I thought red on the missile heads looked pretty cool. And they can actually go on either leg, but I decided to just go with the left. And here's the Zaku machine gun, the last thing that needed to be done. Just did some silver dry brushing and some clear red on silver for the scope. And that's pretty much it for everything on the Zaku. And here's the completed build. So final thoughts on the kit. This thing was amazing. It's one of the best HGs I've ever built, the best Zaku I've ever built, that's for sure. And as you can see, it can get some really nice dynamic poses. In my eyes, Zaku's are mainly ground units, but as you can see, this thing can really get up there in the air. But on the ground, it also looks really awesome. So yeah, I had a blast building this thing and painting it. I think the weathering job on it came out great. Honestly, I'm very pleased with it, especially that heat axe. It's been a long time since I've attempted any sort of effect like that, and I think it came out really nice. And yeah, I had a lot of fun making this video too, so if you guys enjoyed this style, please let me know. I hope you found it informative as well. I can't guarantee I'll always make a video like this for every build, but I will try my best to do it every now and then. But in any case, thank you all for watching if you stuck around till the end, and I will catch you all next time.